Welcome back to Godless and Grounded. When we look at the world today, religion remains one of the most powerful forces shaping people's lives, decisions, laws, and conflicts. Among the many religious traditions, three stand out as the most influential: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Each of them traces its origins back to the same region. They are called the Abrahamic religions because they all consider Abraham a foundational figure. Their holy books, the Torah for Jews, the Bible for Christians, and the Quran for Muslims, are considered by their followers to be sacred, timeless, and divinely revealed. But here's a question that needs to be asked openly. If these books are inspired by a divine, all-loving, all-wise God, why do they contain so much violence? Why do they so often call for punishment, war, and exclusion? And despite their different names, do they really deliver different messages, or are they simply different brands of the same product? Let's explore this question honestly and with an open mind. The first thing we need to acknowledge is that these texts were written in times when human civilization was still developing its sense of morality, justice, and social order. The Torah, or the first 5 books of the Bible, is believed to have been written over 2,500 years ago. The New Testament of the Bible came a few centuries later, and the Quran was compiled in the 7th century CE. All 3 books reflect the values, fears, norms, and knowledge of their time. People lived in tribal societies. War, slavery, patriarchal dominance, and brutal punishments were not just accepted, they were often glorified. Now let's take a closer look. Start with the Torah, which also forms the basis of the Old Testament in the Christian Bible. It's filled with laws that call for stoning, burning, and execution. In the book of Leviticus, for example, there are laws that demand the death penalty for actions like working on the Sabbath, being gay, or worshiping another god. In Deuteronomy, a rebellious child can be taken to the elders and stoned to death. In Exodus, God supposedly sends 10 plagues upon Egypt, including the mass murder of innocent children, just to convince Pharaoh to release the Israelites. Why would an all-loving deity punish children for the actions of a king? And why do we continue to treat these texts as sacred, when so many of their laws would be considered crimes against humanity today? Move on to the Christian Bible. Many Christians argue that Jesus brought a message of love and peace. And yes, the Gospels do include words about loving your neighbor, turning the other cheek, and helping the poor. But let's not overlook the darker parts. Jesus himself says in Matthew 10:34, "I came not to bring peace but a sword." He speaks of eternal damnation and hellfire for those who don't believe. The New Testament promotes the idea of eternal punishment for disbelief, an idea that has caused fear and trauma for millions, especially children raised in strict Christian households. And remember, the New Testament continues to uphold the authority of the Old Testament laws. Paul, one of the most influential writers in the New Testament, defends slavery and insists that women remain silent in churches. How can we call a book timeless and perfect when its moral teachings reflect such outdated and harmful ideas? Then we come to the Quran, considered by Muslims to be the final and complete revelation of God. The Quran, like the Bible and Torah, contains verses that speak about compassion and mercy, but it also contains verses that justify violence, war, and the subjugation of non-believers. In Surah At-Tawbah, chapter 9, it tells believers to kill the polytheists wherever you find them. In Surah Al-Baqarah, there are commands to fight those who reject Islam until there is no more disbelief. Apostasy, leaving the religion, is considered a capital offense in many Islamic traditions, and this is based on the hadiths, the sayings of the Prophet, as well as interpretations of the Quran. In many countries where Islamic law is enforced, people can be punished, imprisoned, or even executed for leaving Islam, criticizing the religion, or drawing cartoons. Blasphemy laws exist in Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and other nations, and people have actually been killed by mobs for being accused of disrespecting the Quran or the Prophet. Now ask yourself, how is this different from the violence we see in the other books? Are these holy texts really that different? Or are they different versions of the same ancient system of control? Think of the Crusades. a series of holy wars launched by Christians in the name of God. Think of the Spanish Inquisition, where people were tortured and executed for not believing the right version of Christianity. Think of witch trials, where women were burned alive because they were accused of being witches, often based on Bible verses that called for killing witches. Think of the violence against Jews throughout Christian history: pogroms, forced conversions, expulsions, and eventually the Holocaust, which was made easier by centuries of Christian anti-Semitism. And what about Islam? Think of the Islamic conquests that swept across the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe. Think of modern-day extremist groups who justify their actions using verses from the Quran and Hadith. Think of young girls denied education under the Taliban, or women forced into marriages under Sharia laws. Think of journalists, poets, and activists who are imprisoned, tortured, or murdered for criticizing religious authority. Of course, many believers will say, those are misinterpretations. That's not what the religion really teaches. But this raises a crucial point. If a book can be so easily used to justify both peace and violence, then maybe the problem isn't just in how it's interpreted, but in the book itself. A divine message, if it truly came from a perfect being, should not be so ambiguous. It should not be so open to abuse. It should not inspire crusades, jihads, inquisitions, genocides, honor killings, or terror attacks. Let's bring this back to today. In 2025, religious violence hasn't gone away. In fact, it's still shaping global politics, from Hindu-Muslim riots in India to Christian nationalism in the US, from Jewish-Palestinian tensions in Israel and Gaza to blasphemy accusations in Pakistan. Religion continues to divide and endanger lives. And it often traces its justification back to ancient books written in times when people believed the earth was flat and disease came from demons. Can we really afford to keep treating these books as absolute truth? Let's compare religion to a legal system. When a country's constitution or laws are found to be harmful or outdated, what do? We change them. We amend them. We evolve. But with religion, there is no room for change. It claims perfection. It demands obedience. And when obedience is demanded from flawed, fearful, or power-hungry humans, the result is often violence. This doesn't mean every religious person is violent, not at all. Many believers ignore the violent parts of their scriptures. They cherry-pick the peaceful verses. They live kind, ethical lives and never harm anyone. But that's not because of the religion. It's in spite of it. It's because of their own sense of empathy, compassion, and critical thinking. They are better than the books they follow. Let's consider a thought experiment. Imagine if the Bible, Quran, and Torah had never been written. Imagine that instead of spreading religion, we spread universal education, critical thinking, and empathy. Would the world be more divided or more united? Would we have more wars or fewer? Would we have more fear or more freedom? There are still people today who believe that disbelievers deserve hell, that women should be submissive, that gay people are sinful, that blasphemers should die, that apostates should be punished. And where do these ideas come from? Not from science, not from reason, not from empathy. They come from ancient texts claiming divine authority. Religious institutions powered by these books continue to influence laws. They lobby against LGBTQ+ rights. They fight sex education. They oppose women's reproductive choices. They control schools, courts, and media. And when challenged, they point to their sacred books, the same books that have promoted slavery, misogyny, tribalism, and divine punishment for centuries. So are the Torah, Bible, and Quran really that different? Or are they ancient tools of tribal power, dressed in different languages, claiming to speak for the same invisible authority? In the end, we have to ask, should humanity continue to let its future be shaped by books written in the distant past, by people who knew less about the world than a child does today? Or is it time to grow up, to evolve, and to build our ethics on reason, empathy, and shared human values, rather than the fear of divine wrath? Different names, same violence, same threat. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we moved beyond them.